April 26, 1865. A barn in Virginia is surrounded by Union soldiers. Inside is John Wilkes Booth, the most wanted man in America, murderer of President Abraham Lincoln. The orders are clear: take him alive. But as the barn fills with smoke, a single shot rings out. A sergeant named Boston Corbett, acting on what he claimed was a direct command from God, fires his pistol through a crack in the barn wall. The bullet strikes Booth in the neck. He dies hours later. Corbett is hailed as a national hero, but his heroism was a problem. And the man himself was a walking, ticking symptom of a disease the nation didn't yet have a name for. This is the story of how killing the assassin didn't bring justice, but created a new kind of victim and forced America to confront the invisible wounds of war that never truly heal. The nation in April 1865 is a traumatized body. Lincoln is dead just days after the Civil War's end. The hope for reconciliation is shattered, replaced by a burning demand for vengeance. Booth isn't just a criminal, he's a symbol of the rebellion. His capture and a public execution are seen as essential for national healing, for justice, for closure. The manhunt is the largest in American history. Thousands of troops are involved. The pressure is immense. And then Boston Corbett, a man who had already castrated himself with a pair of scissors to resist sexual temptation, takes matters into his own hands. Initially, the public cheers. Corbett is the man who avenged the great emancipator. But the cheering quickly dies down. The government is furious. They wanted a trial. They wanted Booth to stand in the dock, to answer for his crimes, to legitimize the Union's victory through the process of law. Corbett had robbed them of that. He was interrogated for hours. Why did he disobey orders? His answer was unwavering. God Almighty directed me. He was neither charged nor rewarded. The government simply released him. He was too famous to punish, but too unstable to celebrate. He was an inconvenient hero, a loose end. His act had created a dangerous precedent. Vigilante justice, divinely inspired, against a state prisoner. In a nation trying to reestablish the rule of law, this was a terrifying concept. Corbett was given a portion of the reward money and faded from public view. But the war inside him was just beginning. Boston Corbett was already broken long before he confronted Booth. He was a prisoner at Andersonville, the Confederacy's most notorious prison camp. He witnessed starvation, disease, and death on an industrial scale. He survived, but his mind did not emerge intact. After the war, he returned to his old job as a hat maker. But the fumes of mercury used in the process, combined with his existing trauma, accelerated his mental decline. He became increasingly paranoid, erratic, and violent. He would pull a pistol on strangers during prayer meetings. He believed he was being persecuted. The man who had killed a national villain was now seen as a local menace. The hero had become a madman. The nation that used him now had no use for him. In 1887, his demons won. Convinced a conspiracy was afoot, he threatened his former comrades at a soldier's home in Kansas with a pistol. He was overpowered, declared insane, and committed to the Topeka asylum. A year later, he simply walked away. He bribed a guard, rode a horse to a nearby town, and vanished from history. He was never seen again. His body was never found. His fate is a mystery. But his legacy was just beginning to take shape. And speaking of unresolved endings, let's talk about the struggle to find the perfect soundtrack. You're creating a documentary about this haunting chapter in history. You need music that conveys psychological unraveling, national tragedy, and the weight of a single, fateful decision. But finding that music without copyright strikes can feel like its own kind of madness. That's where Epidemic Sound comes in. It's a massive library of high-quality, royalty-free music and sound effects. No legal battles, no claims, just unlimited access to thousands of tracks. From haunting, atmospheric ambience to tense, dramatic scores. Need the sound of a fractured mind? the somber tone of a nation in mourning. They've got it. Their search tools make it easy to find the perfect sonic landscape for any story. Right now, Epidemic Sound is offering a free trial. Use the link in the description to soundtrack your content. Thanks to Epidemic Sound for sponsoring this deep dive into history. Now, back to the ghost of Boston Corbett. Corbett's single shot cast a long legal shadow. By killing Booth, he created a what-if that would haunt American jurisprudence. What if Booth had been taken alive? His trial would have been the spectacle of the century. It would have established crucial legal precedents for trying terrorists, conspirators, and enemies of the state. Instead, his death left a vacuum. It allowed for wild conspiracy theories to flourish, untested by evidence in a court of law. It denied the nation the catharsis of a verdict. The closure the government sought was replaced by a messy, divinely sanctioned killing that felt more like a continuation of the war's violence than its conclusion. Corbett's act, however righteous it seemed in the moment, was a failure of due process. It showed that, in the raw aftermath of trauma, the desire for revenge can overwhelm the machinery of justice. So, what is the true story of Boston Corbett? It's not just a biography of a madman. The revelation is this: Boston Corbett was one of America's first publicly recognized cases of combat-related PTSD, and his treatment became a national metaphor for its failure to heal. In the 19th century, they called it soldier's heart, or nostalgia. There was no understanding of the profound physiological impact of trauma on the brain. A man like Corbett was simply deemed insane, his actions attributed to a weak character or religious fanaticism. His life after Booth was a slow-motion illustration of a mind shattered by the horrors of war and the weight of a single, violent act. His disappearance was the final, fitting end for a man the country had no framework to help. He was a ghost because the nation had turned him into one. The broader impact was a slow, dawning realization. The Corbett incident forced a reluctant nation to begin a conversation, not just about the legal need for due process, but about the moral obligation to care for the soldiers it sent to war. He was a hero, a villain, a madman, and a victim. But most of all, Boston Corbett was a warning, a living reminder that some wounds are invisible, that justice is more complex than vengeance, and that the ghosts of war don't always stay on the battlefield. They walk among us until one day they simply disappear.